What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I am so excited for today's episode because we're out in the garden. It's 73 degrees. I got my shorts, I got my t-shirt, and I got you guys with me today. So I am so excited. I hope you guys are as well. I hope you guys are going to enjoy and learn something. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a really commonly asked question and one that I've never touched on before. So I'm especially excited to talk about it. And it's, do you apply your fertilizer broadcasting, or do you apply it directly to the planting hole? Which is best? And can you go wrong? In today's episode, we're going to talk about all that because there is kind of a reason why you would do one and a reason why you would do the other. So the short of the answer is that you can do both, but there are pros and cons to each, and we're going to talk about those. So let's go. All right, so the first type of fertilizing is going to be broadcasting. Broadcasting is basically where you take the fertilizer in your hand and you just throw it. Now, this is very easy, it's very convenient, you get a really good spread, but there are some downsides. Now, I'm going to talk about why you'd broadcast first, and then I'll talk about the downsides. So when you're broadcasting, you could broadcast your lawn. That's, you use a broadcast spreader for that. You would use broadcasting for direct sowing seed. Like if I'm going to plant lettuce here, densely planted lettuce, carrots, radishes. If I'm going to be direct sowing seed here, it's very difficult to kind of say, okay, I've got a planting hole here and a planting hole here. And on the back of every fertilizer packet, it should show application instructions. And when you're looking at per square foot or per plant, it's kind of a big difference because, okay, how many plants do I have in this row? Okay, well, I've got like 50 square feet of plants here. It's far easier for me to apply via a square footage than it is for me to apply per plant when it's very densely planted. I mean, I could plant out, 500 carrots, 1,000 carrots in this raised bed here. That's a crazy amount. So for like a single carrot, I'm not going to apply a tablespoon for that single carrot. That would be absolutely silly. So you're going to get a benefit of just widely fertilizing them all through kind of a even distribution across the soil. Now, what are some cons? Well, some cons are it's a windy day, it's going to blow away, and you're going to be blowing fertilizer all across your garden. Two is if it rains. Rain has a tendency to wash fertilizer away through what's called leaching or runoff. And when that happens, broadcasted fertilizer is very close to the surface. Now, you do want to go in and scratch it in. It's very important to do that, but you're only scratching it into like the top 1 inch of soil. So when you do broadcast, you are more prone to it either washing away or running through the soil through the process of leaching. So you're going to lose some nutrients when doing that. And then the final kind of unfortunate thing is that if you have weeds, you're going to be feeding the weeds. So what's really nice about being very accurate with your fertilizing is that you can fertilize the plants you want to fertilize and none of the other weeds. Now, if you don't have any weeds, it's not necessarily a problem, but just something to consider. Also, the final thing to consider when you're broadcasting is basically your overlap zones. A lot of people, when they broadcast, even with like a broadcast spreader, when you're fertilizing your lawn, you have what they call overlap zones. And I cut lawns when I was in high school, and the gentleman I was working for, part of what we did in the spring was spring fertilizing. And he would always tell me, he said, watch your overlap zones because the overlap zones get a double fertilizing. So if I throw it down and then I move a little bit, I throw it down, well, there's going to be an overlap zone there, and that's going to get way more fertilizer than the other areas. So it's just something to consider when you're fertilizing, is being mindful of that, but that's easily avoidable. Just be mindful of those overlap zones so you don't have plants getting double the amount of fertilizer and then some kind of lacking. So just some things to kind of consider, but there are some benefits to broadcasting. Like I said, it's going to be great for those direct sown seeds. Now, what's the next type of fertilizing? Well, it's direct fertilizing. So as the name implies, direct fertilizing is basically digging a hole where you're going to plant a plant. You're going to dig your hole, you're going to take your fertilizer, apply the fertilizer to the hole, mix it up, plant your plant, and then backfill. Now, this plant has been fertilized and nothing else has. So you haven't fertilized the weeds, you haven't fertilized the bare soil where there's no plants, and you haven't fertilized the walkways where you're just going to be walking on your money. But there are some downsides to this. And so I'm going to talk about the benefits first and then some of the downsides, just so you can kind of see the difference between both methods. The benefit of fertilizing directly is that the fertilizer is going to come directly in contact with these plant roots. It takes some time for the fertilizer, when broadcasted, to actually penetrate the soil and get down to the root zone. Yes, both will fertilize, but one does take a lot longer. And so direct fertilizing is going to be the fastest approach to getting your plants fertilized. Now, also the benefit is that it's going to be saving you money, because you're actually going to be fertilizing only the plants that you intend on planting and nothing else. And so your fertilizer is going to stretch a lot further. And the final benefit with direct fertilizing is the fact that you can actually directly affect the plants that need the fertilizer. So in a lot of cases, you have plants like, let's say in this bed, we have lettuce, we have spinach, we have tomatoes, and we have cucumbers. We have a lot of different plants. Well, what if one plant doesn't need the fertilizer? Well, if we just broadcast, it is going to be fertilizing them all basically equally. Whereas, like, let's say the tomatoes are showing some signs of nutrient deficiencies, but the lettuce isn't. Well, I want to be able to directly fertilize those plants. Now, how would you do that if the plants are already growing? Well, in that case, what we would do is we would just fertilize the perimeter of the plant, basically targeting the root zone of that specific plant. So you can directly fertilize without having to dig a hole and applying the fertilizer. This is only done when you're planting the plants. You can directly fertilize, but you can also kind of do a follow-up direct fertilizing as well, just by, like, this tango leaf lettuce that's grown here over winter. We can take the fertilizer and just apply it around the base of that plant, work it in, and you're kind of almost doing a little bit of a hybrid approach, because you're broadcasting it over the surface, but you are going to kind of be very direct with the application. And so it still falls under the guides of direct fertilizing. And so obviously some of the downsides to direct fertilizing is that it takes some more time. And it's very inefficient for things like direct sown seed, but they both work. They both work, and they work for different reasons. And so I'm not gonna broadcast fertilize if I'm planting things like tomatoes, right? I'm not gonna broadcast fertilize with things that are spaced far apart, because they're spaced far apart for a reason. They take a lot of space. And so that one plant might grow up to be, 3 feet in diameter. Well, I'm not going to broadcast fertilize things like squash, tomatoes, peppers. I'm not going to broadcast fertilize those because there's so few plants in a given area. I might as well direct fertilize those. Now, like I said, in small spaces where you're planting it out very densely, that's where broadcast fertilizing does work. So just some pros and cons to think about with fertilizing and the two different types of fertilizing that you have. Now, this final thing that I was going to mention is that this applies to a dry fertilizer. If you have a liquid fertilizer, you are basically always going to be essentially broadcasting it. And so just keep that in mind, that this is only for dry fertilizing. But I get this question a lot. I thought I'd cover it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there, subscribe if you're not yet already, and we'll catch you all on the next episode. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later.